Hey there, it's Mr. K. Welcome back to the fourth lecture for AP Lit. Today we are going to talk about identifying and describing specific textual details that convey or reveal a setting. So we've talked about character in the last few lectures. The next place that we go in Lit is, or the AP Lit curriculum is setting. All right, looking at the setting. So specifically, this lesson is going to explain how to describe the setting of a short fiction text. Specifically, we're going to focus on Kate Chopin's short story, The Story of an Hour. So I'll give you the disclaimer here in a minute, but it is necessary that you read that story. If you haven't, you can hit pause and find it. It's easily accessible online. It's it's a quick read, but a good read. It's worth it. So. There's the disclaimer, right? So you gotta read that. And if you're maybe reading it for the first time, if you're just kind of jumping in for just this video, look for details related to setting. If you're one of my students or you've been kind of following the lectures in order, we've already looked at character. And so now you can kind of add the next layer of analysis would be looking at setting. All right. So today's goals are these. We're going to understand what constitutes setting in fiction. And understand how textual details reveal setting. All right, so pretty good place to start as far as setting is concerned. All right, what is it? How do we find it? Okay, so I like visuals like these and the videos that CollegeBoard provides for students. Also uses this visual, and I think it's simple, but it's useful. So when we're looking at setting in literature, what we're doing is this: we're obviously pointing out something about the setting itself, like where, when, where is the action taking place, when in time is this, right? And then some textual evidence for that. How do you know that to be true? Then a description. Okay, here's what's going on with the evidence that I just provided. And then, that's all pointing towards this blue column, which is the function. What is the point? If a story takes place in spring, who cares, right? Why does that actually matter? And that's where we're trying to get to, all right? So if you haven't read Story of an Hour, again, you gotta, or I guess you don't have to, but the next slide will only really make sense to you if you've read the story. But once you've read it, what I want you to do is hit pause on this video and, on a Google Doc or, blank Google Doc or, piece of paper, whatever, right? Try and identify in the story. I have 2 here, maybe 3 would be nice. Details about the setting. When or where does it take place? What is the evidence for that? And describe it. If you want to take a crack at function, fine. But if you feel like I'm not quite there yet, I just want to kind of like find it and describe it. That's what I would have my students do probably, is these first 3 columns. Okay, so go ahead, hit pause, and see what you come up with. Okay, so sorry, I'm recording these at school, and we had a announcement over the PA system thingy. Okay, so let's get back into it. So let me show you what I came up with. Of course, this is not all of the examples, and if you probably found different ones or some different ideas, and that's fine. But here are 3 examples. All right. So as far as setting, where does this take place? We know it is in Brentley and Louise Mallard's home. It's in the pre-21st century, and it's in the spring. Okay. So here's the evidence for those 3 things. How do we know it's at the home? Well, it says she went away to her room alone. That room in her home, right? And we know it's Brentley and Louise Mallard's home because she is, at the beginning of the story at least, we learn that Brentley Mallard has supposedly died, and that Luis Mallard is mourning his death, we think. Right? It's pre-21st century. How do we know? Because we are told that there is a second telegram, right? Which means there's an original telegram, and that's the mode of communication. Okay, so that puts us pre-21st century, and it takes place in the spring. How do we know? Well, there's new spring life, right? And I'll talk about that piece of evidence specifically at the end here, but we are told new spring life, and we get other descriptions that Mrs. Mallard is seeing, birds chirping, and I guess you wouldn't see that, hearing birds chirping, or I imagine she's looking out and seeing all the kind of luscious green life and the butterflies flapping around and that kind of thing. Anyway, she sees spring. Okay, let's describe this. Well, Mrs. Mallard is in her room. The description of what she sees from her window, however, makes it seem as if she is only now observing the world around her. Okay, this is interesting. We understand that, or we are led to believe that at the beginning of this story, that Mrs. Mallard is mourning the death of her husband. Right? It only comes from a closer reading that we understand. No. She was actually almost shocked with happiness that he was dead. It was only at the very end of the story where Mr. Mallard walks in. He is not dead. That the news was wrong. That he actually survived this accident. That Mrs. Mallard falls over dead. Right? Why is it important that she's in her home? Well, it seems as if she lives the type of life where she spends almost all of her time in the home. He's out, she's not. Right? He's out doing work and talking with people and visiting friends and stopping at the pub on the way home from work or whatever. I'm just making this up, but and she is at home. She's in this, it doesn't say this, but I would describe it as a cage. I don't know about you, but like during COVID, I love my home. It's my favorite place on the planet, but I started to feel like I gotta get out of here. Imagine living your entire life that way, right? And so she went away to her room alone. That's all she has. She's stuck at home. She is a woman in a man's society. All right, which takes us to, this is pre-21st century. All right, we know because the telegram, the story takes place a long time ago, as evidenced by their reliance on telegrams. Why does that matter? Well, think about gender roles, the expectations on women, the expectations on men, the differences. Understanding that this is pre-21st century really gives us an idea of maybe what kind of existence Mrs. Mallard is actually living. And as a man in 2022, that's a perspective that I can learn a lot from. Right? It's not one that I have experienced. So now I'm kind of seeing life through her experience, her perspective. We talked about in the last lecture, right? And that's evidenced by the fact that she's at home and it's pre-21st century, right? And so that lets us in a little bit into the setting. And then finally, spring. We see new spring life. Kate Chopin specifically tells us that the story takes place in the spring and that there is new life around Mrs. Mallard. Oh, gosh, it's heartbreaking. She learns that her husband has died. We believe that she is heartbroken. but she's not. She's like, she goes to her room, closes, locks the door. And she's like, I'm free, 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 she keeps saying under her breath. She looks out the window. She looks out of the cage, out into nature, and sees new life. Lush, green, life. And the birds chirping, and I said this earlier, but the birds buzzing, and flowers blooming, and it's a beautiful outlook, right? Think of her setting. She's in a cage, but maybe for the first time ever, she's looking outside the window. She's looking out the window and seeing there's a better life, and it's outside of this house, right? There's freedom, and there's goodness out there, and I'm gonna go find it. And I don't want anyone to die, but I can't help but feel like, get it, girl, right? Mr. Mallard died. You're free. Go live your life. Get out of there. But what happens? She never makes it outside, right? Mr. Mallard returns home to the cage, but he has the freedom to go in and out. He can leave as he pleases, right? Come and go as he pleases. And it's only then that Mrs. Mallard, dies, right? So some details in the setting, some evidence, and a description, and then a lot of what I was just saying was sort of function-y sort of language, and we will get there. Of course, we'll get there. But right now, it's like when you're reading something, can you understand where, when it's set? Identify evidence for that, and then describe that. And later we'll describe function, right? But that's the idea, right? And that's how we try and recognize setting in literature. So here's a key question. How do details in a text convey or reveal one or more aspects of a setting? Things such as the location, the time of day, the year, the season, the geography, the culture, right? Those you want to remember. You want to get those down. How do details in a text convey or reveal one or more of those aspects? And again, the next step we will get to, which is like, okay, so why does that matter? Don't worry about that right now. Just when you're reading something, can you read in such a way that you understand when and where it's taking place? Right? That's a really good starting point. And that's more than a lot of people think when they're reading things, right? And so that's your key question. Today's goals were to understand what perspective is. Nope, these are from last time. I'm so sorry. I forgot to change here. So sorry. Here we go. Today we were trying to understand what constitutes setting in fiction and understand how textual details reveal setting. All right. And so hopefully this video helped you do those two things. Sorry about the little mix up at the end there. But hopefully this video was helpful, and I'll see you next time.